What's good, y'all? It's your boy Havoc. Final round. It is going down. We got Terence Crawford versus Shawn Porter. Okay. Now, unfortunately, I haven't been able to do film study on this one because everything gets blocked with these guys. You know, they're both part of major promotions, so it's hard to find any film that you can use. And any film that I probably could use is probably like 8 years ago, and I know some people complain about, you know, the fights being outdated and doing film studies on them. So I was like, you know what, I'll just talk about this one. I'll break it down. I'll do a prediction, and I'll kind of give my opinion on how I think each fighter should approach the fight. Now, look, let's start with Shawn Porter. For me, when I first saw Shawn Porter, I was just turned off stylistically. He's not the type of fighter I enjoy watching, but I do understand he is very fan-friendly. If you're a casual fan, and I don't say this to be condescending, you tend to like the brawlers and the sluggers. To me, that's what Shawn Porter was when I first saw him fight. But I have grown an appreciation for Shawn Porter over, you know, especially when he took this fight with Terence Crawford. I see that he truly is trying to develop as a boxer. He's dedicated to this craft. He doesn't duck anybody. You know, he's game, and I gotta respect that. Now, unfortunately, here's the thing I see with Shawn Porter. Once again, I respect the idea that he's trying to develop his IQ in the boxing ring and become more than just a slugger or a brawler. But I almost feel he's trying to do so many different things that he's a master of nothing. Okay, he's subpar at a lot of different things, but he's a master of nothing. Now, you always hear me say it's important to be a multi-dimensional fighter if you want to be the cream of the crop, elite of the elite, creme de la creme, okay? Like Terence Crawford. But here's the thing about Terence Crawford. He has mastered, you know, one style. He has mastered one way of fighting or doing one thing stylistically in that ring. So he's able now to branch out, okay? But when you haven't mastered anything, you know, you're just going to be subpar at a lot of things, and you're not going to have that bread and butter to go to and build off of in a fight. But this is the power of being multi-dimensional. Shawn Porter, you know, he can do a lot of different things. He can. You know, it doesn't win him the fights, but he's always in the fight, essentially. And that's a testament to, that's why it's important to be trying to develop as a multi-dimensional fighter. But honestly, if I'm in Shawn Porter's corner, you know, which, I mean, everything is set in stone, but if I'm, hypothetically speaking, Shawn Porter or in his corner as his trainer, I'm like, dude, you're a dog. You're a dog. You go hard in the paint. You got a great mentality, a mentality that we don't see too often in boxing nowadays. You're going to be a pressure fighter. You're going to cut off the ring. Okay, you're going to be in your opponent's face. We're going to give you a really good stiff jab. You know, you're going to use some variety. You pump it up and down stairs. You're going to feint. You're going to put in your body work. Nice hooks to the body. And you're going to break your opponent down. And then go to the head in the later rounds. Take them out. That's what you're going to be. Point blank period. Keep it simple. You know, and you're going to do this very well, and you're going to keep on working it till you perfect it. That's who you're going to be. That's who you are, because you have the ingredients mentally to be that fighter. A dog mentality, toughness, grit, willing to throw down in exchange. Okay, let's refine that now, because we don't just want you to be a brawler. We want you to be a pressure fighter. We want you to be an aggressive fighter with skill and tactics backed behind you. And I wish you may be one gear, right? You're gonna say that in a sense. Okay, you're gonna be one gear, but you're gonna be one hell of a gear. And that's what I wish I would see Shawn Porter evolve to. Not so much, okay, well, I'm trying to be a counterpuncher here, a back-footed, you know, come forward, brawl, you know, boxer puncher. No, just for him, I think he needs to stay in one lane and perfect it. Okay, I think that would benefit him more. But it seems like him and his dad are going to try to take an approach where, you know, they're kind of they're trying to style bend. Now, I don't think that will work in his favor, especially for this fight. And another thing I noticed about Porter is sometimes he tends to go into this bouncy rhythmic movement. on his toes, bouncing back and forth, that amateur type feel, okay? And I'm cool with that. A lot of fighters from the 80s that I especially loved and admired, Terry Norris, Meldrick Taylor, you think about Sugar Ray Leonard, they had those on your toes, bouncy style, back and forth, back and forth. And you see Shawn Porter do that. I saw him do it in the Errol Spence fight. And I noticed that, and I also heard somebody say on an online panel, Shawn Porter has great footwork. And I was like, yeah, let's hold up there. Like, can he move very well? Yes. But here's the thing. I don't care how well you can move. Is there a method to the madness? Is there substance behind that movement? Because if there's not any sort of methodology behind that movement, you're just wasting energy. You're just bouncing on your toes for nothing. I learned that early on when I first started sparring. I was like, you got to understand, I came from the University of Central Florida. I played running back for them. I had phenomenal footwork because that's what running backs do. They do footwork drills all day. So going into boxing, it was easy for me to pick up the movements. That was easy. And the footwork, I can move around like Ali, and that's what I did. I watched Ali and I was like, ooh, I can move like that. And I would start dancing around the ring. And then I figured out real quickly, like, okay, that's nice, but is there any reasoning behind to why I'm moving, bouncing up on my toes up and down? And then I figured out that if there's nothing behind it, no reasoning, then, it can be used against you. One thing I learned is if I'm bouncing back and forth, it's a little bit easier to time me because the movement is obvious. The rhythm is obvious. All you gotta do is time me. Okay, I'm pulling back, now shoot the right hand. Time them perfectly, okay? And then I also learned it's a waste of energy, unless you have something you're trying to get out of it, okay? Maybe you don't want to engage in the pocket. Maybe you can take advantage of staying on the outside and keep on moving and making your opponent reset his feet. But when I was first boxing, I didn't understand all that. And so I would keep moving on my toes and I would have sparring partners go down to the body on me. And now I'm exponentially getting tired because I'm bouncing on my toes and I'm getting hit to the body. So I finally learned the importance of settling down. Now, there's nothing wrong with fighting on your toes and bouncing back and forth, but there has to be reasoning behind it. And those guys in the 80s, like Sugar Ray Leonard or, Meldrick Taylor or Terry Norris, they were masters of controlling distance, absolute masters and technicians. Those boxers don't exist anymore, guys. That's a different era, a different breed. I think we will never see stuff like that again. And the sport is evolving in a different way. But those guys were masters of controlling distance. And Shawn Porter is not a master at controlling distance. In fact, he gets way too, it's like when I see him bounce on his toes, sometimes he'll jump in from outside range to inside range recklessly, and that's just a good way to easily get countered. He got countered by Errol Spence multiple times. Errol Spence is not even his punch placement isn't spot on and perfect either. Errol Spence, he did a good job of stepping back at times in that fight and shooting that left cross, when Shawn Porter wanted to get reckless in terms of his, jumping from in to or outside to inside range. But Errol Spence is not the sharpshooter that Terence Crawford is. Errol Spence, I've seen him in that fight put his head down and close his eyes. I don't know if he's closing his eyes, but he's looking down at the ground. He's off balance. I saw him trip one time while he was stepping back. Terence Crawford's not going to trip. He's not going to be off balance. His punch placement's going to be spot on and perfect. He's a sniper, okay? And then he can do that in punches and bunches, not just shooting one left hand or right hand and that's it. No. Crawford he's a machine gun. He can step back and give you a flurry of punches. And I see this fight ending up in a TKO or a KO for Terence Crawford. I think that it will happen around the ranges of round 8 to 12. We will get a TKO or a KO. The way Shawn Porter, if he doesn't settle his movement down, if he wants to jump in and out of range without feinting consistently or without some sort of jab or great head movement, that's a great way to get countered, especially by a fighter like Terence Crawford, who will easily have the ability to fight off the back foot. All he wants are step back and shoot counter punches, not just with one shot, but punches and bunches. He got a little taste of that with Errol Spence, but Errol Spence, in my opinion, doesn't have the same punch placement, doesn't have the same accuracy, and is not as controlled and as well balanced as Terence Crawford. So that's the way I see this fight going. I think that Terence Crawford is going to have his way, and whatever Shawn Porter wants to do, you know, it's going to be used against him. If Shawn Porter wants to fight off the back foot, I would not be shocked if Terence Crawford walks him down, okay, and puts a little bit of pressure on him and counters him as he's walking forward. If Shawn Porter wants to get aggressive, Terence Crawford's just going to step back, like I said, and counter him, punches and bunches, and punish him. If Shawn Porter kind of wants to make it, a game in the center of the ring, you know, Terence Crawford will gladly oblige him, okay, and playing that game as well. I think this is going to be a statement for Terence Crawford. I think he's going to show why he should be considered pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world, if not on top of that list. Obviously, Canelo's making it very hard for him to get on top of that list. But for me, I think that Shawn Porter is going to come into this fight trying to do a lot of different things, but he's not a master of any of them. I think his movement will be used against him because it's too obvious and it's not controlled. And sometimes there's not a jab behind it. Sometimes there's not enough head movement. And sometimes there's not enough consistent feinting. He can move very well, but I don't know if he completely understands why he's moving that way and what he's trying to get out of it or what he's trying to set up, you know. So Terence Crawford's going to make a statement. I think he's going to win this fight somewhere around 8 rounds, 8-12 by TKO or knockout. I can see it being a counterpunch. I think that we're going to see the classic switch up of stance by Terence Crawford. He's going to get in that southpaw stance. He's going to land some nice right hooks, left hands, and I think he's just going to have his way ultimately. And I will say this, Shawn Porter, I think the way he should approach the fight is keep it simple, stupid. You know, is he going to do that? I don't think. I think he's going to try to throw a lot of different things at Terence Crawford in terms of, you know, changing up his rhythm, timing, and movement. But if I'm Shawn Porter, dude, just be a dog. You got the right mentality. Just finely tune that mentality, okay? Build off of it. Put pressure. Cut off the ring. Get in his face. You know, establish your jab. And, you know, come behind that jab, some head movement, and that's when you can let your hands go, okay, and rip to the body. If you don't have the best punch placement, the best thing to do is go down to the body. That's what Errol Spence does, okay? Until you get your opponent where you want them and slowing down, go to the body. Those add up. Even if you're touching arms and elbows and, you know, or the side of the hip, that stuff slows your opponent down. And I'd rather touch you down to the body than miss completely to the head. You know, if it was me, hypothetically speaking, I try to control that aggression and put some skills behind it and make it consistent for 12 rounds. But I think we're going to see lots of different things thrown at Terence Crawford from Shawn Porter. I think Shawn Porter will be on his toes at one point. I think he'll settle down sometimes in the middle of the ring. I think he'll try to step back and counter. I think he's going to try a lot of different things. Unfortunately, I don't think he's a master of any of those. But, you know, when I saw Porter fight Spence, he had his most success when he settled down and he started exchanging, okay? When he started trying to put a little pressure. That's when he had his most success. He even clipped Spence on the top of the head. I think it was with the right hand. And I'm not saying it wobbled Spence, but it definitely kind of stunned him right on the top of the dome. Porter had more success when he settled down his movement and sat on his punches as opposed to bouncing on his toes. You have to be a master at controlling distance if you're going to fight that way, like guys like Sugar Ray Leonard or Terry Norris or Meldrick Taylor. But that type of style of boxing, it's hard to see nowadays. So I feel like it's more used, moving that way is used against fighters nowadays more so than it was back then. But if Porter's gonna come in there and try to kind of be this multifaceted character stylistically, what I would do is use that footwork to move around the ring, maybe to lull Terence Crawford to sleep, okay, in his movement, just to change up so he doesn't become predictable, okay? Change up the rhythm, change up the tempo, okay? I'm bouncing on my toes. Then maybe the next round, I'm settling down on my feet, and then I'm exchanging. I'm hanging in the pocket. Then, you know, maybe I do that for 2 rounds, and then maybe the next round I go back on my toes. Okay, give him a different look. Try to shoot jabs from the outside, get in, get out. Okay, then the next round, you know, I'm changing up the tempo and rhythm, changing up my timing. So if anything, if you're gonna try to be this multifaceted character, maybe that can be a game plan. You know, just being unpredictable, and then taking that dog mentality and picking points. Maybe you steal rounds at the end, okay? But, you know, like I said, you gotta be a master of understanding and controlling distance if that's the approach you're gonna take. You know, sometimes it takes good 6 to 8 rounds to settle down and find what's that distance. But when you're changing up your rhythm, okay, when you're going from bouncy, you know, bouncing on your toes to, you know, sitting on your punches or whatever it may be, it's hard to get comfortable. And I don't think Shawn Porter's that type of guy to where, like, you think of a Boots Ennis, who literally, he just has that feel. He has that gift. He can do that, okay? He can get away with stuff like that. You know, switching stances and not even thinking about it, controlling distance, and it's not even a thought. That's a generational talent, though, and that's not Shawn Porter. But, yeah, I mean, Bud can get clipped. We've seen it. He can get clipped, and Porter does come from awkward angles sometimes, and he's ferocious, and he has that, you know, go-getter mentality. But unfortunately, I think that will be used against him in this fight. And I think it will not benefit him as much as it did in the Spence fight, because Crawford is a sharpshooter, Crawford is a sniper, and he will make you pay for getting reckless in your movement. So that's the way I see it. Tell me what you guys think. Who do you think is going to win this fight? Do you think, you know, obviously a lot of people are favoring Bud, but do you think that Porter can make it out all 12 rounds? It wouldn't shock me, you guys, because it wouldn't shock me if Porter made it out, because the benefit of having all those different types of movement, even if they're not really any substance behind it, it makes you very unpredictable and awkward to deal with. And it takes some time to get an opponent down like that, right? It takes a little bit of time to get their timing down. It's like, whoa, what is he doing here? You know, he's just off balance, off rhythm. You know, those are some of the hardest opponents to deal with sometimes. And then you match that with a gritty mentality. Yeah, I could see it going 12, but it's not going to be in Porter's favor. But honestly, I can see this ending up in TKO or knockout, because this is not the same type of guys Porter's been facing. Bud's coming with, he's the complete package, okay? And he's not just a good counterpuncher, he's a phenomenal counterpuncher going backward and making you pay. And he's gonna land a perfect one right on that dome. So, once again, let me know who you think is gonna win. Who do you think has the advantage? Who do you think is the better fighter? Do you think it'll go 12 rounds? And do you think it will make a statement? You know, if Crawford wins this fight in convincing fashion, where would you put him on your pound-for-pound list compared to Canelo? Do you think he's better? He's the best welterweight in the world if he knocks out Porter compared to Spence's performance? So let me know. It's going down. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to watch the fight live. I'll be busy. But get at me, guys.